Well, we should be. I better leave these on. I won't be able to read comments without them. We should be live now. Uh, there's nobody here yet to let me know, but hey, when you check in, please let me know if things are working for you, including sound, of course. We've had some technical issues there in the past. Um, Tonight's chat is focusing on who will be the stars for 2025. That includes the transfers we've gotten so far, returning players. If you also want to predict who will leave in spring, which may also include current players and some of the transfers. The way rules are now, if a transfer doesn't like the way things go in spring, they can do it again, I think. I don't know. Before we get into that, especially since there's still nobody here, I'm going to start with some catching up on the news for the roster and early enrollees. A couple of notes on the roster. Jackson Accuardi, who was recruited as a tight end, is listed as an offensive lineman. So I guess the plan is to put some weight on him and use his mobility. Well, if he was a tight end, he was going to be primarily a blocker anyway, because that's mostly what happens in this particular offensive scheme. So moving him to tight end doesn't make that big a difference. I hope he is happy doing this, not just willing, but happy. Uh, and maybe it's the best for him long term. We'll have to wait and see about that. Um, Sammy Etienne is listed at safety. He was, recruited more as a corner, I think. And Chris Filippo is also listed at safety. He was recruited as a safety, but might be more likely to end up at one of the spear spur kind of positions. We'll see. Again, let's see. Wilcox, who was a walk-on, is not on the roster. I don't know when that happened. It may have happened a good while back, and I either missed it or forgot about it. Uh, Interesting note, to me anyway. We have Ramondo Johnson listed at Bandit. He's the only one listed as Bandit. We have Jennings listed as the only spear and Onwuka as the only spur, which would mean three flex positions: Bandit, Spear, and Spur. I suspect that that is just a temporary matter while the roster is undergoing the changes between the old defense and the new defense, as well as determining just what the new defense is going to be. So I assume we will only end up with two of those hybrid positions. But hey, maybe this is the future. Maybe we're going to have a Bandit, Spur, and Spear. Now, what those names mean won't be the same as what they meant in the past. So there's yet another thing we're going to have to wait and see. As far as the early enrollees who have made it, what I saw listed on the roster anyway, Brandon Hamady, Za Jackson, Brandon Caesar, Amir Leonard Jean Charles, Wilnerson Telemaque, Michael Hasty, Gavin Crawford, Scotty Fox, Sammy Etienne, and Chris Filippo. And really good to, I mean, Caesar, Leonard Jean Charles, and Telemaque, having three of the incoming defensive linemen here early could make a really big difference. I mean, one or two of these guys may contribute this year. You always hope it's not necessary, but if they work their way into the rotation, hey, not going to complain about that. Just don't want it to be through injury necessarily. But I think that's, I mean, just about half of the class of 2025 is on campus. That's good. That's good news. I like that a lot. Uh, I'm still the only one here, which is, pretty well depressing, but I will continue for a bit and we will see what happens. Now, I did not do an introduction, so let me go ahead and do that now. This is WVU Football Going Deep, the channel for people who like to think as well as cheer, and I am Forrest Poston. Hey, we've got somebody here. Thank you. I'm no longer quite so lonely. And as always, please subscribe, share, click the thumbs up button, click the notification bell, make comments, and tell your friends. And we'll just try to keep the channel growing and take things from there. Now, I'm going to start with the defense. I'm going to save those glory positions of, quarterback, running back, wide receiver for last. Yeah. If you really want to, you can just skip to the last part of the channel. But don't want people just to watch the glory parts and leave. You just have to listen to things like defensive linemen. Oh my. Starting with defensive linemen. Hey, 2 people. Yeah, we're ripping right along. Now, I'll tell you, one of the big differences, I think, between me and a lot of the fans, I have lots of faith in the, players already here. Now, I think, the transfer players, most of them should be on campus. They're not listed on the roster yet, so it's a little hard to tell. But, so I will just call them current players versus transfers and, leave it at that for the time being. But I'm seeing a lot of people who just expect every transfer to automatically take a starting position over the players who have been here. And that's not going to happen. One thing, it can't happen because if you've got 2 safety positions and you've got 4 or 5 safety transfers, they're not all going to start. But I simply do not think transfers are going to take every spot on the team the way some people seem to think. And a lot of these, the transfers they went out and got aren't necessarily being recruited to start. Some of these guys are brought in as depth pieces. They might compete for a starting spot, but, I think the defensive, well, of course, we didn't recruit heavily on the defensive line. We brought in 2 edge rushers, or 3 edge rushers, I forget. But, I mean, if Vesteranen comes back from his injury, I think he'll start. He may even be a star. He was always steady Eddie, but with flashes. If he shows more flashes this year, that's a big thing. But personally, I think 2 of the current former players, whatever, Asani Redwood, if he stays healthy, I think he's going to be a big force on the defensive line. And I think he will shine in this defense. He came to the game late, so he's still learning a lot of things, and he's had injury problems the last 2 years. So he's been held back. He's had chances to show, and he's done well. I really think healthy Redwood is possibly the star of the defensive line. Hammond Russell's going to be very strong. Gabriel could take the step to being a star. I think he will, at least by next year. Whether it's this year or not so sure. I mean, he made a lot of rookie mistakes last year, but he was impressive at other times. So I think Redwood and Gabriel are high potential to be the defensive line stars, and I'm going to distinguish between edge rushers and defensive line. Allie's defense is going to flex in a lot of different ways. At times, the edge rushers will be part of the defensive line. At other times, they'll be kind of separate, a distinct thing of their own. Now, I mean, of the edge rushers we brought in, I said when I talked about Robinson, he was brought in to be a star. Uh, oh, yeah, let me just go ahead and, thank you, Timothy. Good to have company. And of course, if you have opinions on who you think is going to, be one of the stars on defense, post. If you have questions about it, post. I don't care. Not claiming I'll have a good answer, but I bet I'll have an answer because I don't know is an answer, and I use it a lot. But Robinson of the edge rushers, he is intended to be a star. And he has the numbers to back up, the hype that he has gotten since he committed, which is not necessarily true of all of the guys. Of course, hype and numbers, even when they match, don't always lead to success, but it gives you better odds. Our other edge rushers, Onwuka, Fisher, they are young. Don't know what they'll do this year, and don't even know if they'll be used as edge rushers or bandit. They say, Fisher's listed as defensive line. Onwuka, I think it was spear or bandit, I forget which. Spur. Yeah. But so Robinson needs to shine. I'm not saying we're in trouble if he gets hurt, but he needs to be a star player. Get those sacks, not just pressures. He needs to get the sacks and the tackles for loss. But he is one of the guys I think they are counting on and expecting to be a star. Most of the others, it's kind of going to be a blessing, if they reach star status. Now, and I really don't know how to break down bandit, spur, spear. Because like I say, I think that's going to change a lot. I don't know that we will have a star at the hybrid spots this year. We've got a lot of young players, and actually we don't know who will be playing those spots. So it's kind of hard to say who will play them, if who will star at them if we're not sure who's playing them. Let's see. I do thank you, Rodney. I try to make it enjoyable. Let's see. I think very last lineman. Are you talking about on offense, William Reed? If so, we'll get to the offense here in a bit. I do want to focus on defense first, and Reed is on my list to talk about. But I mean, Jennings had highlights last year. Again, young, made rookie mistakes. He almost certainly will play one of the hybrid spots. I'm not sure what it will be called, and I'm not sure who else is going to be at these spots. Linebacker room should be strong. Will we have a star linebacker? Because I mean, we brought in two guys, and a page of my notes is missing, so I'm was it Chase Wilson? I think Wilson's the last name, one of the linebackers we brought in. And he's Wilson and Carrico figure to be the starters, I think, at this point. both have star potential. Now, it's partly going to depend on how they adapt to the defense, but they both have star potential. Ashton Woods, second year guy, I think he's, not ready to be a star. Um, we've got a couple of our own, the young guys from last year who look to get playing time, but I don't expect them to be a star. Um, I think, Chase Wilson is the guy who's kind of being expected to be a star or hoped to be a star linebacker. Um, but Carrico, I think, will be right there with him. So we may not have a star linebacker, but I think we will have two very good linebackers. Um, Beyond that, we're going to have to wait and see. Of course, this is all guesswork. Um, Dude with a capital D. Yeah, I'll take it. Um, See, not making the cut. I am kind of heading in that direction, but it's not so much that I see specific players not making it as I definitely think some guys will bail out in spring. Some will bail if they don't end the spring as the starter. Some will bail if they aren't in the too deep. Especially guys in their last year, and especially ones who were thinking they would start or play a lot. If they aren't making the cut and it's their last year, even if they just transferred in, I think there's a good chance that they will head elsewhere unless they think they can play their way into a starting spot by fall. And I will get to some specifics later because they're mostly on offense. Uh, nah, I really like the defenses with a lot of flex players. The guys who are, you know, hybrid linebacker, D-back, linebacker, defensive lineman, that sort of thing. But mostly I want to see an aggressive defense. I don't care if it's a four-man front, a three-man front, a three-man that looks like it's a four-man, whatever. I want to see pressure on the quarterback, and I want to see movement in the back seven that the quarterback doesn't expect. Now, that actually goes back, I am a Jeff Castile devotee. And he said with the 3-3-5 that, you had to, basically had to be aggressive and deceptive. Even to, he liked to have players just kind of walking around, rather than necessarily taking up a single position. And when he had an experienced teams, there were a lot of interceptions just because the quarterback thought that player was going someplace else. And that's what I want to see. And Jordan Leslie psychologically couldn't do it. I think he had I don't know. Is it possible to lean towards the safe choice genetically? I don't know, but I think he got caught in a loop where it's harder for him to call and it depends more on call defense after the offense got to the line, and I think that was a big mistake. But yeah, whatever front we run, I want aggressive and deceptive. That's what I'm looking for in the defense. Of course, that's a fan. That's a fun defense to watch, but it also does tend to be a much more effective defense. The last 2 or 3 years when our quarterbacks have had problems, it's been against relatively simple defenses that disguise what they're doing, that move in an unexpected way. Line up in this look, switch at the snap of the ball. And we didn't do it. That's corners. Now, actually, kind of going back to the question of not making the cut, I think there are a lot of corners and safeties on the roster right now who won't be after spring. I think we have too many. And I think that's intentional. When Rodriguez was at West Virginia before, he recruited, and I would say over-recruited for speed on offense. He wanted a quarterback, running back, and wide receiver who were fast and elusive. That was kind of his first goal. And he tended to bring in a lot of players at those positions, and the ones who didn't make it got switched. Quarterbacks became receivers or defensive backs, or in one case, I think a linebacker. And receivers got moved. Running backs got moved to receiver, receivers got moved to defensive back, that sort of thing. But I think he likes to have a lot of numbers early and then whittle it down. Under the old rules of recruiting and transfer, you did that by bringing in a bunch of players and then moving them elsewhere. And Castile frequently just had to create a defense out of a bunch of players from the offense. Now, well, you can't really do that, partly because you're bringing in players later in their career. They don't want to switch positions, and if you switch them, they can leave. So I think what Rodriguez is doing, at least this time around, is over-recruiting certain positions. And of course, corner and safety were where we, need a lot of players. But I don't think we need as many as we have now. Most of the guys who are coming in are one-year players, so they have to expect to start. They don't want to waste their last year. But we have a lot more potential starters than we have positions. And I think the guys at corner and safety who are down on the list at the end of spring will transfer. Now, who will star? Now we got Coates being brought in, and he is brought in with the expectation to start, and probably to be a star level corner. Will there be a second corner who can match him? We're still waiting for Jacoby Spells. His freshman year was still his best year so far. Of course, injury has hurt. And I think the last 4 games of his second year were very good. But that was when the defense those last 4 games was aggressive, and then we kind of lost it again. But I think that aggressive nature helps players a lot. Keyshawn Robinson had a good freshman year. I don't think he'll be a star yet. The big question mark is, of course, going to be Galloway. Big-time recruit. Can he come in as a freshman and play in the Big 12? I think we've got guys who'll still beat him out. Because, Jason Chambers, he's the last corner we signed. He's got that potential. He's been working his way up. And he's one that I think he might make the jump very well. But, it's not as big a jump as it is for some of the other guys we brought in. But because we've also got, among the transfers, we've got Jordan Scruggs, Golden Nelson, Derek Carter, Jason Chambers. Um, and we've got Spells in his last year. We've got Jordan Jackson in his third year. I think Spells and Jackson will be among those who are potentials to transfer out if they're not top, you know, you know, at least number two on the depth chart. Um, who will make it? I don't know. I mean, Scruggs, Golden Nelson, Carter. I mean, those guys I think they're among the ones that they're just kind of taking a flyer on. Um, Low risk in terms of what they had to commit to get them in, probably. So if they don't turn out, the loss is minimal. I think those guys are more likely to be depth pieces. And I think we've already got some depth pieces among the corners. Um, Safety, much the same story. Fred Perry, he was good at Jacksonville State. I don't necessarily see him being a star at Big 12 level. Maybe he'll step up. Justin Harrington, he's one of these, man, there's a load of guys on the transfer group who have a history of injuries, very high potential. They've shown flashes when they were healthy, but they haven't been healthy all that much. So I think a lot of these guys, we're just bringing them in the hopes that they will stay healthy and return to peak form. Harrington, if he's healthy and plays at his peak level, he's a star. I itch because of how many of that type we have on the list right now. You got to figure some of them are going to stay healthy, regain form, but and you're just not sure. And Israel Boyce, again, rookie mistakes. He's a good player. I think Boyce and maybe even Cross. Well, and Tarnu will probably play safety, especially given how crowded the corner room is. Now, he may get moved. I mean, he played a lot more at these, like the spear position last year, and he was pretty good at it by the end of the season. So he may end up in, um, Ali's version of that. But I just, we have, what, I think 9 safeties for two positions. I don't see us carrying that many. Now, of course, we're also switching to this 105, total limit. So how, the scholarship situation is different. You're not keeping a bunch of walk-ons who are there really just for practice squad. So how many you keep at each position isn't going to be like it was before this. But I don't see that many safeties hanging around after spring. Now, actually, I left out Corey McIntyre on the defensive line. I shouldn't have. He was injured last year, but he does have star potential. So I'll go back and mention him. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. The right players and play calling is as important on defense as it is on offense. And in some respects, I think the attitude of the play calling may be more important on defense. I say, oh, sheesh, not long after I started this channel, and actually before that, when I was posting on other people's channels, playing a safe defense slows the players down. You just lose a little bit of your edge. Yeah. Similar to what happens when you go into a prevent defense. You just don't have you know, you lose just that couple tenths of a second in reaction time, couple tenths of, in your speed, and that's enough. Um, so, I mean, an aggressive defense brings out more in the players. And I think the effect is more on defense than it is on offense. Um, Quite possibly wrong about that, but I think the aggressive attitude of a defensive coach makes the defense better. So yeah, I mean I agree that the players, the scheme, and the calling have to be a match. Yeah, yeah. Ali will run a lot of various defenses. Um, I'll tell you what, Kenny, I'm gonna take a pass on that one. I didn't stop to break it down that way, particularly among the seniors. I did a video last year just on that, so I'll probably do one later. Of course, we're entering the time period when you have to look for a lot of subjects because we're not likely to have much in the way of news coming out. So thanks for bringing that up. But it's kind of a different way of looking at the same question. But if I don't get to it here, you know, before spring camp, remind me. Um, all right. We are ready to switch over to offense, but I'm going to start on the offensive line. Now, that actually goes back to the William Reed question. Or I assumed it was Reed you were talking about. Because, yeah, we did get a commitment from William Reed out of Princeton. I mean, he was a 4-star recruit out of high school, went to Princeton because he wanted the higher quality education, um, which the Ivy League supposedly gives. And now, hey, he's graduating in May. He won't be on campus until then, but naturally, he wants to see what he can do against the Big 12 and Power 4 competition. And I want to see what he can do. There are a lot of people who are very excited about him. With pretty much all of these players, I am being more cautious than, I mean, some people, hey, their response, if you question any of these transfers or the overall pattern of transfer, they just say Rodriguez knows what he's doing. That's not that much of an answer. Rodriguez is an above average coach. He's not perfect. Um, I'm guessing a lot about what his intentions are based on what I see in the patterns. I may be wrong about all of that, but I don't think he's not going to hit on all of them. Nobody does, especially when you've got 30 or 31 recruits. Um, Looking at his highlights for Reed. Now, of course, highlights are handpicked. He knocks guys back. He knocks guys down. He hits at good angle, good leverage. Um, his scores, his PFF scores, his run blocking is good. It's not great. It's good. Now, Princeton uses a zone blocking scheme, so he's familiar with the concept. His pass blocking, his scores there are pretty bad. Now, this is a run heavy defense, but you add up, 30, 35% of the plays as passing plays, and you try to run a lot of plays per game, you'd better be able to pass block. So Reed definitely, he has the potential to be the offensive line star. Now, and I think offensive line is the place where you least need a star. You have a greater need of 5 good players who work well together. A star can be good, but a star and a weak spot, no. 5 players who play like one player. Um, I think we have an excellent chance of having that. Only concern, of course, is getting the line to gel. We're going to have, I'd say, 1 to 3 transfers on the offensive line starting. Livingston's been around for several years, and of course, Bosley, he's got a year under this offensive scheme and a year at West Virginia. But like everybody else, it's going to be a different line coach. It doesn't matter whether you've been here, Jacksonville, or you're coming in from someplace else. It's a line coach you haven't worked with before. So I think that's going to make a difference. And again, the line is where we're also bringing in a couple of guys who great potential, injuries. They may be stars if they stay healthy. We could have 3 stars on the offensive line. We could. But I'd still rather have 5 solid players who play in unison. And heaven knows I still want another center. I wouldn't mind if Livingston turns out to be a star at center. That would be terrific. I don't see that this year, but I'd like to see another center on the roster. Other people are saying, they'll do something. They'll move somebody. They'll cross-train. I want a center. I want a guy who has played center before. And I'm going to end up saying that a lot until it happens, I think. But on paper, on film, I guess, more than anything else, Reed has the potential to be the star lineman if we have one. Bosley may kick it in too, for that matter. Tight end, I don't think. I mean, tight end's going to be mostly blocking. I'm not going to pick a star there. Receiver, and I'm going to kind of lump slot and wide into one. I'll distinguish a little bit. But I'll give me a minute, Kenny. But I think Gallagher will have a breakout season. He showed lots of flashes last year, made some nice catches, missed a couple. Now, he can get downfield. I would expect him to be used more with the screens, the short passes, basically be the Darius Renaud of this year's team. And he could be very good at that, very good at that. This offense may end up suiting him very well. And, a quick slot receiver sometimes gets a lot of touches in a Rodriguez offense, more than a wide receiver usually does. So Gallagher could be huge this year. I'm not convinced any of the other slot guys are star types. We've brought in several. I think most of them are decent quality players, guys you can win with, but not stars. Now, moving wide, I think, Cam Vaughn had a breakout season last year. Will that translate against Big 12 competition? He will have to step it up from last year. Last year will not translate in the Big 12. He'll have to be better. Will he be the starter? I'm not, because we didn't see much of Jaden Bray last season because of injuries. So we still don't know what he has. And of course, we don't know how he will fit in this offense, if he'll want to fit in this offense. Bray has the potential to be an above average receiver. Raymond, freshman last year, when I did the analysis in the signing class, the one thing I noted, he was a much more polished receiver in high school than you usually see. He had his technique down. They talked several times about him last year. So he could step up to be the number one receiver. I think he's got that potential. But I also think if he's too far down on the list after spring, I see him going someplace else. We'll have to see where that breaks down. But I don't see him hanging around to ride the bench for another year. Now, okay, let me cut here briefly into prediction. It's tough. It is. We really do not know what's going to happen with this roster. We have a solid core that stayed. We lost a lot of key players, but we have a solid core that stayed. And again, we've got a couple of weak spots where injuries could kill us. But I don't think the defenses will be ready for this offense. Now, our Pac-12 teams, guys who played against Rodriguez before, are going to be more prepared for this offense than the old school Big 12 teams. So I think there is a chance we surprise a lot of teams this year. Now, in my opinion, this offense runs the risk of becoming too predictable. Now, it's designed, in theory, to basically react to whatever the defense does. So that in theory, whatever they cover, you go someplace else. The old baseball theory of hit them where they ain't. But if you take your defensive game planning a step farther, you can essentially fake this offense into going where you want them to. If you know what their reactions are to reads, you can essentially feint in one direction, know what they will do, and be there. I think that's what Pitt did. Now, basically, back in that era, the Pat White era became predictable. And I think teams had figured out, what the read reactions were. Or particularly Pitt, I think, did. Now, most of the time, Rodriguez has put in enough of a varied passing game to make it harder to predict. That was the problem before. There was not enough downfield passing, not enough over the middle passing. And so there was a large part of the field you didn't have to worry about at all. I think that may be one of the things he learned. And if he doesn't fall into a similar pattern, we win more games. So I think, we probably do win at least 8 games first year. A lot of people are expecting the second year to be the bigger year, and I think there's a risk that it could be a lesser year if teams figure out how to defend this offense. Um, all right, defenses are faster and more varied than ever before. Um, so we're going to have to wait and see. Let's see, what do we got going here? Um, yeah, I mean, that's it. Now, receivers always have to be willing to block, always. Even if they're blocking for another receiver on a passing play. But in this, this offense, they have to be willing to block, and there can be such a thing as throwing too few passes to keep your receivers involved in the game. I noticed that there were times last time around at West Virginia, there were times where it looked like the receiver had a pass thrown at him and was completely taken by surprise and didn't remember what to do. Um, I mean, especially if you, in that era, if you were not the number one receiver, if you got, I mean, you might go 2 or 3 games without being targeted. So it was a problem. But yeah, receivers have to be willing and able to block. That's no doubt about that. Um, Now, switching to running backs. Now, that's on the surface, it's the easiest one. Jaheim White, dang well better be a star. you know, um, Regardless of who was coaching this year, this is a year Jaheim White really needs to be a star. And in this offense, if he's not hurt, he had better be a big, big star. Question is number two. I mean, will we go for the big back like we did with Donaldson? Or will number two be, either Taylor coming in, of course, moving way up in fighting class. We've also got Hubbard and Dunbar, both of whom extremely impressive, film. Hubbard was ahead by the end of last year. We're a different system. Dunbar is about 15 pounds heavier, still fast and elusive. So, do we go from, the really small, quick back with strong legs and jump up to the 230-pound back? Or do we just kind of move up to the 15-pound back? Of course, a lot of that's going to shake out in spring. I really don't have a clue how the number two back is going to work out. And potentially number three. I mean, we've got the quality in the running back room, to have 3-star running backs. Of course, and potentially enough touches for them to get noticed. But Clay Ash, I'm not going to leave him out of the discussion. I mean, he didn't, he was just special teams last year, but he showed enough in the spring game to say, he's got something. Does he have more than the other guys? We'll have to see. But running back, White, star. Who is the number 2 star? And I think we actually do want 2-star running backs. We want a second running back who comes in to get a lot of yards, but I don't know who it's going to be. At least quarterback. Okay, we've gotten there. But yeah, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Kenny. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, definitely. Oh God, was it Edwards or something? I didn't write down the name. That's on the page that I misplaced. But yeah, the big running back we're bringing in, he's faster than Schmidt. Now, of course, he's he's not a runaway beer truck. He's a little too quick for that. I don't know, do we have a beer van or something like that? But I I kind of hope Rodriguez is not bringing him here to be a blocker. We've got a lot of tight end guys who can slip into an H-back spot. Um, and I'd kind of rather go that route for the extra blocker. Um, but yeah, hey, if you need him, he should be able to do it. And he'd better be willing to do it, or this wouldn't be the place to come. But now, quarterback, okay. I think Khalil Wilkins will be a star in the future. Unlikely to be this year. I don't think Max Brown is being brought in to be a star. I don't think Max Brown is being brought in to be a starting quarterback. I think he is. I think Max Brown is expected to be the number 2 quarterback. And I say that because our competition is Marchiol and Henderson, depending on how Henderson recovers from injury. And, does he hold up long term? He's got some impressive looking games, but he never had a long run. Now, of course, Marchiol has not played a lot of games either, and some of those weren't good games. But I think of those two, one of them will hit the portal. I don't think either of them wants to be the number 2 quarterback this season. And Edwards is sort of, I think, the insurance policy. And that can be two ways. I mean, you've brought in a potential star quarterback in Henderson with a history of injuries. So Brown becomes your insurance policy against that injury, or your insurance policy if one of your 2 potential star quarterbacks hits the portal. And just kind of assuming that Wilkins is still another year away from being really ready. And I'll say, I haven't watched film on Henderson, haven't seen an interview. I know nothing about him. I want Marchiol to win it just because, hey, come on, I know him. I mean, not personally. I know him as having watched him with the team for a couple of years, and I want him to succeed. You watch the guy, you want him to succeed. And I mean, and he's got the leadership skills. Now, a lot of the linemen, backs, and receivers he's worked with aren't here anymore. But I think he will fairly quickly establish that relationship with the new guys. I do not know what leadership skills Henderson has. I said last year that the team would run through a wall for Green. I think they would run through a wall for Marchiol. Would they do that for Henderson? I do not know. And I want a quarterback that every player on the offense and most of the defense will run through a wall. That's one of the things I want in a quarterback. Now, I think we can distinctly say Henderson's a better runner. Marchiol is a good runner who kind of likes to knock guys down at the end. And despite all of the hard edge stuff, that's not what Rodriguez wants in a quarterback. He wants an elusive running quarterback. Now, number one, he wants a quarterback who succeeds. But he is fond of flashy quarterbacks. Now, so I think either Henderson or Markiel, I think whichever one wins the starting spot will be a star quarterback, not a game manager. Um, Now, of course, if you're not a flashy runner, you don't show as much of as a star. You, but I think Markio will make the passes, he'll make the decisions, and enough of the runs to be a star quarterback. I'm not going to predict which of them will win the spot. Um, I want Markio to win it just because you know he's not a stranger. Which isn't really a good reason, but it's what I've got. Um, anyway, oh, oops, let's see. I missed a few here. Yeah, I won't like the Cole uniforms until they put some red on them. Coal miners bleed for the state. Coal miners die for the state, for the company, for their family. And you cannot make a true uniform representing coal miners without red. So, and I don't think they'll ever have the nerve to put red on those uniforms. But until they do, I do not think they. I think they honor they're honoring coal, but they're not properly honoring coal miners or the coal miners family. That yeah, let's see. I do appreciate that, Timothy. Oh, Lord mercy. It has been almost an hour. Uh, Never did have what you call an extremely large crowd tonight, which is somewhat disappointing. But people have already lost interest in the football. Yeah, they got excited when Rodriguez was hired, and the first few rounds of transfers coming and going. But there's definitely been decreased interest as we head into the grunt work period. Although we're coming into the time where the games next season will be won. It is not as exciting. It's not as fun to talk about. I'll try to come up with some more interesting ways. But of course, the basketball team is taking a lot of the attention away, unlike last year. And got to give those guys credit. It has been, whatever happens the rest of the season, it has been a rather amazing season, particularly being done with the number of injuries. Now, for whatever reason, I've found it completely uninteresting to watch any basketball games the last few years. I've been trying to get back to an interest in West Virginia basketball, but the game and I mean, DeVries is my kind of coach. And I thought I would be really excited to watch the games, but the game itself just doesn't thrill me the way it once did. Yeah, but fortunately, football still does, but only West Virginia football. I have essentially completely quit watching anything but West Virginia football. We'll see how that goes. Um, it's, oh, yeah, that's of course Preston Fox retired, and man, this could have been a big season for him as a returner, but I think just the damage to his body had gotten too extreme. He had a chance to go NFL as a returner. Speed wise, we've got Dom Collins. He looks like one of the natural guys to consider. Where, I mean, with all the new guys we've brought in, I don't know where any of them stand as returners. I don't recall. I think one of them might have had, returner might have been in part of his description, but generally speaking, it is going to be wide open. I think everybody who returned anything last year, Jalen Anderson did some. You know, well, he's still in the portal. I don't think he ever settled any place. Um, so that is going to be a big question. Um, and right, say Dom Collins is the only one who comes to mind. Maybe Keyshawn Robinson. I mean, he's got the speed, but speed is only part of it. Preston Fox was not the fastest receiver. He just had, well, first he had the ability to catch punts, but he also had the instinct, um, and that special type of guts it takes to be a kick or punt returner. It's different from the psychology of just about any other position you play. Uh, I hadn't even thought about it. I have to give that one some consideration and look more through the roster. Um, it, yeah, the way things are going, they should. Now, this last game was a letdown, and well, I mean, you can understand that, but they can't let it continue, and that may determine the season. If they go 3 games of kind of not having that sharp edge, that will be a problem. But DeVries is not known for letting his teams go multiple games playing off. So I do expect him to have things turned around for this next game. Um, and I mean, the great potential's there. And of course, the team is in a position to just get better. And it's helping recruiting already. So it becomes a question of, will DeVries stay? And that's, I mean, West Virginia is not entirely a stepping stone job, but it partly is. And it depends, I mean, will DeVries just like it here enough to prefer winning here to Michigan, for example? And that means things in various ways. Well, it's been longer since I watched baseball than it has since I watched basketball. Um, long ago, I was a major Reds fan. And moving around and you're in places where they're not showing the games, and you're not around other people who enjoy the game, you kind of quit watching. You lose track of who's who. And I mean, the more they started trading players in all of the sports, where you're not watching the same guys every year, I like watching, players over time. That's part of the team thing to me. Um, Not sure, but really it's just, I still watch the movie Major League. I enjoy parts of Bull Durham, Field of Dreams, but to sit down and watch a game, man, I watched a World Series game 2 or 3 years ago. I guess other things have kind of moved up in priority. Um, Now, kicker and punter is still, they signed a kicker. Koshin did fairly well given when he was given a chance last year. Oliver Straw will still be the punter this year. I think this is his last year, but he should be the punter. Um, Kickoffs, field goals, you know, like I say, the guy we just brought in, transfer or Koshin would seem to be. I think Flowers, that is the other guy on the roster, and they may still bring in somebody else. But Straw, the punter, and I think Koshin would currently probably be the leader for kicks. I think he was kicker, not punter. But yeah, and I think there may be one other walk-on the roster at the moment, but hadn't heard that. I mean, certainly potential explanation, but yeah, I mean they just, from everything I've read, because I don't watch the games, but I still read about them. Um, they were off. Illness could do that. Too much celebrating after the beating number two could lead to illness. But yeah, I mean lots of potential explanations. And you rarely have a season where you don't have a game like this. Same with basketball, you play enough games that you can have off games and lose them and still have a big season. Shorter season like football, you don't, one off game that you don't find a way to win can spoil the entire season. But yeah, I go back to the Pete Rose, Tony Perez, Johnny Bench, Joe Morgan, Davey Concepcion years. I even go back to the Bobby Tolan years. Oh, there was a guy with a very strange batting stance. Although Joe Morgan was more fun to watch as a batter. I recall, would have been about 1975. I think maybe playing San Francisco, and Cincinnati was down 7, 8, 9 runs with, it was about the seventh inning, and I told a friend, they're going to win. They did. That was the Big Red Machine years. That was a heck of a team. Well, I mean, ever once they changed ownership, uh, and it sucked since. And yeah, as soon as a player plays well enough to have trade value, they're gone. Even not watching them, I was still hearing all of that in the news, and it's just like, well, I don't want to watch them now, so. Yeah, I mean, that was um, Sparky Anderson. And the trick for Anderson was, how do you have all of these great players and get them to play together? And they did. I mean, Anderson kept them together as a team. And that was fun to watch. David Concepcion using the AstroTurf to bounce his throws to first base. Yeah, those were very, very good years to watch. If you are a baseball fan and a movie fan, watch the movie Frequency. It is not strictly a baseball movie. Baseball does play an interesting role in the movie. So. I don't know why. I mean, money deals being made, um, getting away from, playing a Power Four team that early in the season. Uh, I don't know. I don't know when they set that schedule, so sometimes it's just a matter of what you can get. But uh, now, of course, OU has actually played some good ball. They are not a pushover. West Virginia should beat the crap out of them, but if you take them for granted, they will sneak up on you. Um, yeah, besides, Athens is nice territory. Ah, I went to school there for 3 or 4 years, some of my graduate work. Um, yeah, followed the game. I'm not sure which game you mean. I've followed a lot of games. Oh, followed a lot, played a few. Anyway, guys, it's after, you know, past an hour here. Um, does anybody have another football question, WVU football question about stars and studs and that sort of thing? As I am, like I say, I need to do a show about who's going to make the NFL. Um, Maybe one about who I think will be gone in spring. I'll give that some more thought. Um, and I need to think of other shows to do. I say I'm not expecting a great deal of newsworthy stories coming out. I'm going to have to come up with something. I don't want to let the channel slide. But, oh, yeah, Hocking Hills need to get up to Old Man's Cave. Um, a few other places there in the area that are worth spending some time. It was good to be able to get out there, get a break from campus life. Although actually I lived in Logan, Ohio, a little bit up the road from Athens. Jenny was doing graduate work at Ohio State, and I was down at OU, so we lived kind of in the middle, and a lot of driving in between. And, Kenny, I do appreciate that. Yeah. And Timothy and Tim. And, so I don't see more questions, and I do have. Well, there are other things besides West Virginia football in life. I know that may startle some people. May not like me to even admit it, but to be honest, food is one of them. And it has been a while since I ate. And as they say in Appalachia, I am a mite peckish. So I'm going to go downstairs and see what's available. There were rumors of food earlier. And of course, there are always cats to feed and medicate. We've lost several this year, but oh, there's still more than one or two that need our attention and our petting. All right, guys. I will be talking to y'all later. Oh, hold on here a second. Um, eh, Last year went sideways. It shouldn't have, but it did. I have theories on why it did. I have theories on why it shouldn't have. And Neil Brown hinted that there were some specific things that caused it to go sour. He will never, ever tell us what they were. I have some guesses. And I have, there's probably some things I wouldn't even guess. But dang, it shouldn't have happened. It really shouldn't have happened. Last year should have been a really good year. But life and should are quite frequently two different things, as you guys probably have noticed more than once. Well, I doubt it. um, I think Henderson and Markiel are it. I think Brown, again, I don't see Brown as a star. I think he, is a backup, and I don't think Wilkins is ready. And I'll be real worried if they go out and bring in somebody else that they are trying to get a starting quarterback. I think that would be a real problem. Um, we could run into chemistry issues this year. When you change this many players, that is always a potential problem. And it doesn't take many bad apples. They say one bad apple doesn't spoil the whole barrel, but it can spoil a whole team. It depends on the apple and depends on the coach. But it will be interesting. Hopefully in a positive way. Hopefully in a positive way. Um, you I'm not sure you should have those in the same sentence. Is it does kind of sound a little weird. Now, Jenny had to go in for a biopsy a couple weeks ago, required anesthetic, general anesthetic. Anesthesiologist came in and said, "Well, we're going to put you to sleep in a few minutes." And I told him, "Don't ever say that to somebody who has cats, because it means a whole different thing." And it took him a moment to figure out what I was talking about. And I find it hard to believe that an anesthesiologist for years has evidently been walking in and telling people, "We're going to put you to sleep." Well, anyway, that kind of shows a little bit of the empathy issues in the medical field. um, he was talked about for the Massachusetts job and the Appalachian State job. Those were really the only two that he got a lot of talk. I think there is some question as to whether or not he wanted a job this year, not because of the money. There is some possibility that he really just wanted to take a year to stop and rethink everything. Um, from his coaching, possibly even to whether or not he wants to coach. Um, Now, whether or not that relates to his reference, to there being things that made it go wrong, it may be a case where you know he got soured. Um, there are actually a couple of things um, that disturb me that may have happened that I don't know they happened. It's just something I would expect certain people to do based on what they've done in the past. Um, and I think it could have really soured him as well as hurting him and hurting the team and the program. But I'm not going to go into details because I am really making some guesses there. But I see you figured it out. Okay, guys, I'm having fun here, but I don't want to wander too far off the subject. And I'm getting a little punchy, and I could say some things maybe I don't want to say, which actually got me in trouble recently. That I got myself banned by the office manager at the vet clinic I've used for 25 years. Um, and I said some things that weren't very nice that got me banned. They were accurate. They weren't nice. But that office manager was coming in between me and some refills that Raucous very, very much needed. And I'll tell you folks, do not come between me and what my cats need. Uh, I will fight for them the same way I would fight for children if I had them. The way I will fight for, an underdog. Um, and he came between me and what Raucous needed. And I didn't get to face him directly, or I would have said worse things than I did. Anyway, that's enough of that. Okay, let me just pop these up. Yeah, Eric, you never forget. Well, of course, I guess you can undo it if you decide you don't like it that much, but I appreciate that approach. Yeah, okay. Okay, there we go. Yeah, Ren Baker is currently the heart of, West Virginia athletics. Of course, he was up for a job, didn't take it. I was a little surprised there. It looked like maybe he might. Um, a lot is, man, they're going to be hiring a new president of the university, and it kind of scares me. Depending on who they hire, that could change a lot of things. And whether a guy like Baker wants, if they hire a guy Baker doesn't like, does he ride it out or does he leave? And I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. All righty. I'll tell you, Tim, I had an aunt who always thought I was going to be a preacher. I think, she would be somewhat disappointed, but I suppose we can call West Virginia football our religion of sorts. So anyway, guys, I am going to call it a night because I have an empty stomach and a full bladder. And that is not a combination that you want to keep going for too long. So I am going to sign off. I'm going to thank everybody for being here. I hope to do some more live stuff. I kind of left it go too long in between them. I'll have to think of things for some live videos because, oh God, that's, you're talking worst fears. I mean, that man, there are people I have a lower opinion of than Manchin, but there aren't many. There aren't many. Yep, I don't recognize the initials. Okay. On that note, Eric, you're giving us something good to leave on. So, guys, I've said so long 3 times now, and that is my normal number. So on 3, I do also say good night.